Welcome everyone to this edition of the ONResearch Talks. My name is Ikpeazu and I'd be your host today. Today's talk is on telecom services, navigating from challenges to an enabler of ecosystems. And with me for the discussion is the head of one of Africa's largest multinationals, Raghunath Mandava, the CEO of Airtel Africa. Thank you so much for joining the discussion, Raghunath.
Thank you, Ugo.
So across the continent, there's a strong push for digitization across industry sectors, but digital infrastructure doesn't operate on its own, and it can't function without supporting technologies and infrastructure. Telecom services are an essential foundation for the digitization process. It would be great to hear from you how one of Africa's core telecom operators is enabling broader ecosystems for digital services. But before we get into that, there's a lot that's been said about the state of the world and the current pandemic, and yet there's still so much that the global economy has to figure out. What does the word evolution mean for your daily business?
Thank you, Ugo. That's a very good question. The key thing is, firstly, let me put the context in place. We are a telecom service. We are an essential service of the critical electricity, water, telecommunication, and services. Not only is this an essential service, but it becomes a lot more impactful in a continent like Africa. Why would I say this? Africa, if you compare with Europe, is almost 10x the size of geographical size. It's 30 million square kilometers and has only about 1 billion population. So the population density of is very, very low. Second, the distances are huge. Population is concentrated in a few cities. And that means with poor infrastructure, the cost of travel is also very high in Africa. Poor infrastructure of roads, public transport, and others. This puts that the telecommunication services that we provide is a much, much cheaper and value alternative for people. So hence the importance of telecommunication in Africa is a lot higher. How do we deliver these services at a reasonable price is the challenge. What is the operating model we try to create in order to deliver at a very low price? Today we deliver a GB of data at less than $1, far lower than rest of the world and surely the developed world. Because we had to rework our operating models, our cost structures, our design of networks in a way we are able to deliver it like this. Second, let me come back to your last question of the last 1.5 years now. And I was a little while back telling my mother it's 1.5 years since I've taken a flight, and except for one flight in between. But otherwise, I've been literally grounded on work. What happens during a pandemic when people can't move out of their house? The demand for telecommunication services further goes up. Because if you have a family in a village or in a town nearby, you need to talk more. You need to communicate in modes the way we are communicating. I'm not sitting in your university now, but I'm doing it remote. So all this requires a lot of telecom. The importance of telecommunication has further, and digitalization has further got emphasized during this COVID. But also, the difficulty of delivering this network has also become much higher. Our teams can't travel, fuel availability is poor in deep areas. When the network goes down, to move your engineers is very difficult. Our field engineers have really done a phenomenal job. I mean, it was coincidental that I was telling that this was the highest year of 99.7% uptime that we delivered was actually during the COVID year. And I think it's a testimony to our teams who have really worked very well in order to deliver these services to the people.
That's excellent. I mean, there's a few key points that come out from that. So really, evolution for you has been, tailoring your services, tailoring your approach to really meet your consumers where they need it most, but then also just sort of, adapting your model to be as flexible as possible in the context of the pandemic and the challenges. I'm sure we'll talk some more about this, but it would be great to hear a bit from you, just building on what you said there, about how you've been able to drive down drive down some of your prices, to offer such a broad range of services at low costs. It would be great to hear from you how Airtel Africa is approaching growth or how you were approaching growth in your key markets prior to the pandemic. So what sort of key factors or elements or models had you put in place to build out that growth?
Thank you. See, one of the things that you always hear about telecom is it's a very difficult industry. It guzzles a lot of capital expenditure. You get 2G in late 90s or early 2000, and then in few years time you get 3G, and then all telecom networks have to reinvest all over again, and then 4G came, and today we are again blowing billions of dollars on 5G. And every couple of years before you recover the older investments, you're again with a new technology and trying to invest. Africa had come late into the game, and we realized that if we had to spend this sort of money in Africa and also deliver very low prices, there was no way that we would be able to provide an affordable solution. Fortunately, there is a technology evolution. Africa came later into the game on digitalization, on 3G and 4G. So what we did was we worked with our close vendors, and just then the whole industry was evolving into what I call a single RAN. What does a single RAN mean? Single radio access network. That means on the same hardware, you could now run 2G, 3G, and 4G with the software upgrade. So what we did was we must be the only company which did it entirely across. We converted and reswapped our equipment to be the most technologically modern equipment, which can, through a software upgrade, move from 2G to 3G to 4G. So you have a spectrum band of 900 or 1800 megahertz of spectrum. You put a hardware that can work on 2G, 3G, 4G. So when a rural area runs 2G more, tomorrow you need more 3G capacity, day after you'll need more 4G capacity. You don't have to reswap the whole hardware. We built a very capex efficient system which does not require multiple changes. This also helps in Africa because you can't go to the tower and redo things and create complexity in your maintenance of your network. Because we did this, while it created a little higher expense at one shot, it gave you flexibility of increasing capacities. Increasing through software upgrades, you could create huge incremental capacities at a very low marginal cost. That suits data, because if you see data consumption, unlike voice consumption has been growing at say about 15, 20 or 10% every year, number of minutes usage. But if you see data, that has been going at almost leaps and bounds. So you will need huge incremental capacities of data. If you can get it at an incremental marginal cost, at a low increased cost, over a period, you can run a profitable industry that can deliver huge capacities. So we reworked our entire model. We worked our entire capacities on fiber, the way we bought bandwidth. We started investing in bandwidth of unlimited capacities from day one, so that we could upgrade through software and technology of upgradation. So we entirely moved into a latest hardware with software upgradable stuff and very high-end technology that could remotely access and optimize our networks in order to deliver this. What has happened? As customers started consuming more data, we've also realized that we could run a profitable business and keep dropping prices. Today, in most of East Africa, it's almost $1 or even lower. We have large bundles of data which people can buy. A 20 GB bundle of data can actually run for less than about 15, 14 GB. Some parts of East Africa can go down to 10, 12 GB, $10, $12 a GB. So that's the way we've been able to sell these prices.
That's really exciting to hear. But I'd like to build on one of the points that you mentioned, because I mean that's a game changer. Investing in hardware and software so that you can sort of roll out software upgrades to allow devices run on different bands. So what were some of the challenges that you faced in taking that approach? I mean, I can imagine, apart from costs, there must have been other challenges that affected your ability to make that switch. Can you share some of those with us?
Yes, sure. The biggest challenge is actually a mindset. The first mindset I remember when I came in 2016 was, Africa is way behind on technology evolution, so we can use old technology in Africa. I've always kept saying, if a continent is large, it's difficult to travel. It is not like Germany or somewhere where you can drive down from one tower to the other in 10 minutes just because you have a lovely highway. The more the infrastructure difficulties, actually what you need is more latest technology. It's a very mindset shift change. You don't need old technology at a lower price in Africa. You need latest technology at relevant prices so that you can entirely run it on software with no more touching. If your talent is not available, deep rural, deep interior, it takes 2 days to travel in the DRC. You don't want someone to be traveling through treacherous terrain. You want it to be done through a software upgrade sitting remotely. So you need to have the first mindset is you need latest technology in a under poor infrastructure country, not the other way around. The second one is it is sometimes in industries like data and voice and telecommunication, where you will see exponential growth, it makes sense to invest ahead of time. The first swap of your network costs you a lot, but then you know you're building on lower incremental costs later on, and you can create huge capacities. I think it's a lot around what I call engineering design that has to come in along with a mindset change. Once you get this done, the teams are capable. In Africa, you get very good teams who can actually execute it very well and in a very disciplined and very rigorous manner. I think it's a very tough thing when you're going through 5 years back. We were in great difficulties. We were a seriously loss-making company. To convince yourself that you have to take a long-term approach, you have to come with latest technology. That's the real tough one, actually.
Thank you. It's exciting to hear. The message that I'm getting from all of this is that Airtel is really a technology focused company, and is really sort of using technology to unlock value in some of these very special business contexts. And from what you said as well, the next question I had was, what tools are you using to manage the challenges? But you've already answered that excellently by explaining how technology is sort of serving or bridging that gap. I'd like us to talk a bit now about the business as a whole in the context of one of the major shifts that's happening on the continent, and that's the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The I always mix up the acronyms, but the free trade area is going to open up huge possibilities for businesses. It's having a few challenges in getting up to speed, but nonetheless, it's a significant opportunity. So how is the business evolving in the context of this free trade area? What opportunities are you seeing? What challenges are you seeing? And how do you envision the business positioning itself in the context of this free trade area?
Excellent question. So let me first step back. Before I ask about free trade area and how Africa is evolving, there are 2 or 3 things fundamental about Africa that we all need to be aware of. Firstly, if you see the geographic map, and if you look at a map of Europe or any place, the lines on the map are very curved, zigzag. They tell you who speaks Swiss, who speaks German and or French, and then they cut that area. 2 villages come this side, 2 villages go that side. It's detailed. The colonial powers, when they left Africa, if you see the map of Africa, there are a lot of straight lines. Someone just sat in Europe and drew one straight line across. This cut tribes, this cut communities, and did not create natural borders. There are countries where you have 3 warring tribes. There are countries, there is one tribe actually split among 4 countries sitting in the border. So the traditional communities got all split. Rivals got put into one. So this is part of the reason why there is so much strife in Africa. So the actual geographical definitions of Africa are actually straight lines sat somewhere far away and done with straight lines between treaties between 2 countries. It is not done with the people in mind and their communities in mind. That is why you see a lot of requirement of talking between countries to another, because if there is a group of people living, the Maasai is living between Kenya and Tanzania, they have been cut off by an artificial border, which is a straight line between Tanzania and Kenya. That is not their community. First, we need to understand this cross-border does not work in Africa because of these cuts. The second thing that we need to understand is bank penetration is extremely low in Africa. While people do talk of a 35-40% bank accounts for adult population, the bigger problem you will see is that the number of bank branches in any country is very low. What does it mean? If you have a large country, huge distances, poor infrastructure and cost of travel is high, accessibility to banking is very low. You can give me an account, but if the bank branch is 12 kilometers away and it costs me $1 to go each way and come back, and my actual average earnings is about $150 or $200 a month, there is no way someone is going to travel in a matatu or a shared bus, as they call it here, and go to the bank. So banking services usage is even lower. Distances are large, people have migrated population, so people need to send money home. And this cost of movement of cash was very, very high. So the second thing is you've broken communities. Second, financial inclusion is low. And because of distances, as I explained earlier, need of communication is high. So if you realize these 3 points together, the need for a free Africa trade is very, very critical. What do you think we should be doing on as a telecom service provider? Firstly, we'll have to kill the concept of roaming over a period of time. We'll have to reduce the serious premiums we charge on roaming. Calls between countries have to become lower. Third, money has to move seamlessly between currency to currency. A Kenyan shilling should move towards a Tanzanian shilling. Today, most of the foreign exchange between countries is actually going through a dollar arbitrage. If you have to send money from one country to another, it has to be converted to dollars and then reconverted back. We'll have to find currencies. So there is a lot of work that we are doing around financial inclusion, and that should help this free trade. And how do we move money from one country to another seamlessly through our Airtel Money platform? Our vision of our company is to bring digitalization, and I remember using this word with one of the prime ministers of a country, that we will bridge the digital divide with the Western Europe. And so actually, some of our countries where we have 100% of our network is 4G, fully data enabled, including the deepest rural markets that you can see. Second is enhancing financial inclusion in the continent. I think in this concept, the need for doing this, reducing roaming prices, getting movement of digital money, financial inclusion and financial money flow between countries becomes a very critical
area. That's very interesting that you mention sort of killing the concept of roaming, improving the flow of money across countries. I mean, these are some of the biggest challenges that that the average person faces. High costs for calling other countries. I mean, it's quite expensive for a few providers if you want to call from Africa out of the continent. So I think that will definitely be a game changer. And I completely agree with you on the financial aspect. It's quite limiting when people don't have access to financial instruments to even do the most basic things. And I think the mobile money platforms and the other technologies that are leveraging mobile penetration are definitely going in the right direction. But I'd like to ask a bit on this point that you've just mentioned. So of course, this has to be happening in collaboration with government or with international organizations. How is the international community or the regional community sort of supporting this work? What sort of partnerships or relationships or stakeholders are you working with to make this a reality?
See, I think the biggest area that we as telecom operators work is actually with the financial inclusion area. Because telecom is now accepted reality, and the role of telecom is quite accepted. On the telecom side, the governments are asking us to cut roaming prices, give easy access, which we are all working together with the various organizations. But I think the bigger one that we are all working towards is to bring financial inclusion into the various countries that we are operating in. The Bill Gates Foundation, the World Bank, and all of them are very keen that financial inclusion happens. Why is it so? One of the big benefits of financial inclusion is also that comes with women empowerment. There have been clear studies that the minute mobile money comes in, the women labor, a woman gets access to financial uh, independence, financial control. She is able to take much better decisions that encompass areas like health of her children, inoculations, and everything else. So, along with telecommunication, financial inclusion is going to be a big driver to a lot of ESG goals, sustainability goals of the world, uh, of the UN, sorry. And that is where I think we should be focusing on.
Thank you, thank you. Well, let's talk a bit. We've talked about the business and how the business operates. We've talked about some of the opportunities that you're creating and the sort of general direction that you're going over the next few years, or the general direction that you envision the business going. Now, let's talk a bit about the models of, I would say the management models, and some of the models that you've put in place to actually turn this into a profitable business. I know this is something that you're particularly interested in because it's something that you've applied, that you have experience applying, and it's something that you've applied over the past couple of years to get Airtel to where it is today. So what can you tell us about some of these engagement models?
Thank you. This is something that we really taken this a little, perhaps, if I may stretch my answer to say upside down. What is the fundamental problem that why do managements have a much lower success ratio than, say, doctors? Uh, Over a period of time, senior management becomes more like administrators. You expect a junior management team to come back with their diagnosis of a problem, their observations, their solutions, and senior management sits and says yes or no. You go to a hospital and you've seen an intern touch you and see you if you go with a broken leg, then an orthopedic doctor sees, and then the chief comes. They don't start by asking the team what's the problem, what is your medicines you're giving. Once again, the chief gets hands-on with you, touches your leg, presses you, asks you the same questions for the seventh time, and then they start debating a lot more on the diagnosis, and then they take action together. In typical management, that has been lost. We believed in Airtel that we should bring back the science of the right diagnosis more than administrative approvals to plans of junior management. So what do we mean? When you design and understand a problem, when you diagnose a problem, when you design solutions, senior management has to be hands-on. The best problems are solved when senior management gets involved into problem solving, not just administrative management. And that means you should be in touch with what you've learned. There are times that we sit and work on operations research teams, that we bring in young people who are much more expert on the tools, but the concepts of operations research are discussed by all of us at senior management in order to get the lowest cost of moving goods, the lowest cost for moving data, what is the most optimal routes. These are areas that we'll have to engage ourselves. Second, so the way we've approached is that problem solving has to start from the top. Very often, a big problem is actually discussed by 5, 6 of us at the senior most executive member table. We are not administrators who people come and then present and go away. All of us have to travel a lot more into the market, which unfortunately we're not doing during the pandemic, but touch and feel the problem and situation. I think that becomes very critical. So the first thing is leadership has to do problem solving. And why do I say this? Senior managers have a lot more freedom to think out of the box and less constraints in what they can do. So the solutions they will come when they do problem solving is much more revolutionary or much more bigger or big impact ones or evolutionary solutions. But if you leave it to people down the line, not that they're not bright, but they live under a lot more constraints. They don't think they have enough freedom to do a lot. So the solutions you get are a lot more incremental. The world has suffered a lot due to this incrementality. And I think it's important for management to start thinking big and doing things differently. I think this has contributed to a lot in the way we operate. Lot more hands-on, lot more in touch, lot more part of problem solving and less administration. We don't believe that we'll have to monitor, manage people. I mean, to me, actually, that's the least I do. Uh, I'm concerned about how people feel and what motivates them, but overseeing them is not our job. We have motivated people, they're there, everyone comes to do a great job. They need help in doing it much better. I think that's the approach that we have taken in the way we look at things.
Thank you very much for that. It's great to hear the management approach and the model that you're taking to problem solving, but then also just to building out the business as a whole. Now, you've just talked about taking a sort of scientific and a really diagnostic approach to understanding challenges and solving problems and moving away from, you know, leaders being sort of administrators. How is this translating into the sort of growth of your workforce? What are some of the things that you're seeing in the way sort of the junior managers are responding to problems, and also in the way the workforce is growing?
You know, this is one thing that I remember talking to someone, and one of our middle managers in a country actually explained this to me. You know, you don't teach people, and no one learns by teaching and listening to someone. They see by observing. I always laughed and I was reflecting about this, and then it realized that, you know, when your baby is there, you don't teach them, you don't tell them, you know, you're now supposed to speak a language. You don't instruct them. You don't instruct them about walking. They see you walking, they hold your hand and they walk. Most learning and development happens through observing others and copying it. If you want your teams down the line to problem solve and start thinking, they need to see senior management in action doing the same things. If you do too many reviews, they do too many reviews. If you demand saying, I don't care, I need results, they will use the same language. If you talk about saying, let's work on it together, let's understand what's the problem, they start using the same language. So you will see it over a couple of years that this percolates down. And everyone starts saying that I need to understand the problem as if it is mine. To me, that's been a real surprising and pleasantly surprising change for me. Today, the language that people talk is very different. So when you have a problem, they comment less and saying, can it be done or not done? They're not judgmental. They're about playing with the problem. They're saying, okay, let's see what is the problem. Let's play with it a bit more. Let's understand a bit more. I think that is where it comes in. Second is the confidence that you can go with a failure or a problem to your boss. Earlier, it was always, you know, deliver or you will be out of job, or you will be questioned, or you will be reviewed. That was the fear. Today, raising a problem or raising an issue is a perfectly acceptable thing, provided you come with all the details possible and you are able to explain what you have attempted. So I think asking your superior for help is no longer a taboo. And it is part of the game that we all play together. I think that makes a little more fun in what you do. And hence we are able to see substantial results. Today, we've been growing at almost 20% growth in the last couple of quarters. Our EBITDA margins are moving. We are among the more profitable telcos in Africa. And I think it comes into performance. And to me, the revenue growth or performance is just an outcome of the way people approach the game. And you know, the goals will happen as long as you play a good football. I mean, that's it.
That's a good analogy. The goals will happen as long as you play good football. I'll make a note of that one. Thank you. So let's talk a bit about, let's go back a bit, you know, dive in a little more into the business and talk about one of the initiatives that you mentioned. You said financial inclusion is one of the big pieces for you. And I know that the Airtel Money platform is really growing at a rapid pace. What can you tell us about this and the approach that you're taking to building this platform out?
Okay. This I will explain in a little detail to also demonstrate to you our problem-solving methodology that we followed. Mobile money is largely known in one or two countries to have developed very well. Kenya, for instance. The way it works is there are series, instead of bank branches and ATMs that you see in banking system, you have people called agents standing on the street who are able to do a pre-funded wallet, which is your bank account equivalent, and cash. So if you go to an agent, you give him cash, they load your wallet with a certain pre-funded wallet that they carry in their phone into your phone. You could go to a different place and return the wallet to another agent and collect your cash. This is how financial exchange happens. What is the problem with Africa and why has it been struggling? So we went back and down and said, listen, the first problem you faced was most agents did not have float. They did not carry enough money. They didn't carry $100 of cash and 100 cash. So when customers went to an agent, someone who put an umbrella and said, I'm an agent of so-and-so brand, most probably you were disappointed because they didn't have enough cash. He says, oh, today I'm out of cash. Tomorrow you can come. Or today I'm out of the wallet. We realized this uncertainty to customers was preventing their adoption, number one. Then we went deep in. I said, why is this that the agents don't have even a couple of $100? Most of this is because what we call underemployment. When employment rates in a country are very low, you have lots of people wanting to do small trade. In Africa, if you ever get on from an airport and drive towards a city, the first indication of underemployment is the number of people trying to sell you peanuts and bananas and water bottles on the street. The more people are selling, the more there is underemployment. They earn very little, marginal 50 cents to $1 a day, but they have no other employment, so they just try and do something to make a living. Third, because of sheer poverty, they are unable to have enough money as a capital. Why so? You have to understand their lives. If you are earning $100, you are always in dire need of money. A brother fell sick, a sister got engaged, you need to pull out capital out of your business for it. So we realized there is a problem. Labor was not expensive. People were ready to work for a couple of $100, but they never had capital. And we said, let's incentivize them. We tried multiple experiments, didn't work. Then we said, let's attack the core of the solution. What we did in Airtel about 4 years back was pick up a franchisee, a rich person like any one of you, who could put a couple of $1,000 and said, hire 6 people and put them in places, and you do the capital and split the labor and capital of this underemployed scenario. So the person gets a consistent income of $100 to start with, and they don't leave their job or run away from that place. Someone else is providing a capital who is rich enough not to withdraw it out. The minute you started giving this assured float, as we call one insight, it started moving well. And we said, how do you tell people that out of the 100,000 agents in this country, 5,000 have 100% assured float? So we built branded kiosks, exclusive outlets out for them. So we built in a category where everyone talked about building a mass number of agents. We focused on fewer number of exclusive outlets, but there is a sense of assuredness to it. How do I explain this to investors? When I explain, I say, suppose you had a bank with an ATM in your city. Bank A had 150 branches or 200 branches, but you rarely get money there. You go there, you get disappointed. Bank B has only 30 branches, but ATMs, but every time you know there is never going to be a shortage. Which one would you prefer? Assuredness beats spread. I don't mind traveling a little longer as long as I don't have an uncertainty around my mind. A human being prefers steadiness, lack of uncertainty. You have enough stress in your life as a customer. So when we started moving towards assured float model, our business took off. Today, we are growing well into the 50-60% marks and phenomenal growth that we are able to see. There are countries where we moved from literally 0 penetration to a 50% penetration on mobile money in less than 3 years. And I think this becomes in investing very heavily into special own infrastructure, kiosks and Airtel Money branches, and to do this. I think that's how we really turned the problem upside down. And when the whole industry was going to mass agents, we started consolidating. The mass agents continue to exist, but we consolidated and supplemented with a set of assured float network.
I can imagine, I can imagine if you're in a village somewhere and you need to get some money and you go to the one stand there and he doesn't have money. It can be quite frustrating. So that's an interesting approach to, not just meeting a business need, but actually positioning yourselves to meet the consumer's needs where it matters the most. Let's talk a bit. I mean, it's been excellent hearing about Airtel from you, and I think we've gotten quite a few insights into how you've built out that business and how you've been able to really position the brand. What advice would you give to businesses that are trying to position themselves as enablers of broader ecosystems? So, for example, as a telecoms company, you're not only facilitating communication, but now you're facilitating payments, you're facilitating digital inclusion. What would you advise, or how should businesses be thinking about using their services to build broader ecosystems?
Thank you. This is an area that requires a lot of thinking. You go and talk to teams and tell them you have a target to achieve. It's not inspiring. You can't always sell targets and bonuses and growth to people. It's not motivating. I think every company has to understand that in the entire economic chain, there is a purpose why you are there. And you have to be clear about the purpose. For us, it is about bridging the digital divide and enhancing financial inclusion. When people realize this, you start making a clearer impact. Let me give you an example, and where I believe private enterprise has always made a mistake. If you go to governments which were running electricity or water or any of this earlier when it was run by governments, some of that got privatized in some of the Western nations. But when it was run by governments, the language used is about how many villages do I cover electricity with. They never talk to you about how much will my electricity revenue grow by. The governments have always used a very sensible language of what more can I do for the people. Somehow when private enterprise came, they talk about how much revenue can I grow in telecom. And we kept saying, stop that. How many more villages will you cover? How many more towers will you make data enablement? How many more customers will use data? How many more will have access to internet? How many villages will have an exclusive point where you can get float for your money? When you start converting into targets that can make meaning, revenue will always grow. I think the team below can get inspired. When you tell them that, now we have moved our exclusive distribution of float and availability to so many villages. I think that makes a lot more sense. It's very important for private enterprise to understand why are they in this chain. Other than revenue, all of us will make in order to be sustainable. You have to make revenue, you have to grow revenue, you have to make profits. That's the only way to sustain this. If you make losses, you can't anyway do any of the good that you're thinking of. But get clarity on your purpose. Do it in an efficient manner that can make it profitable. Because good profitable business is the only way of sustaining the good you want to do. But be clear of what is your role in the society and what are you playing for.
Thank you. I think that's quite profound. Being clear of what your role in society is. I think taking that perspective will definitely always remind businesses that there's more to it than whatever your core expertise or your core skill is. So thank you very much for sharing that. I'd like to get a sense from you now, just on a broader sense, going a bit beyond business to look at economic growth in the region. The region was seeing some decent growth figures prior to the pandemic. And then of course, with social distancing measures and, with the shutdown of economies, growth has been stunted across key markets, Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Kenya. What do you see are the prospects for growth over the next couple of years, just broad economic growth at this point? And how do you see, or what would you see as the key levers for this economic growth?
See, the first thing, I think what the pandemic has done is something very unfortunate. And this is coming up in the Gini index world over. The middle and the richer classes are able to save more money during this pandemic. They're not holidaying enough. They're not eating in restaurants enough. They're not staying in hotels enough. They are saving a lot more money. But the poor have got poorer. They've lost their jobs. Most white collar people haven't lost jobs. It's people with the unorganized sector you have lost. So I think more than the 8% growth coming down to 4% in East Africa, to me, that doesn't worry me much. I think the bigger thing that we are all going to contend with is the fact that the disparity of incomes and the poor have gone really poor. And I think there has to be a lot more work by economists, governments in bridging this divide. And I think that is, to me, the more concerning part. There has to be a lot more stronger social security measures for the poor. Subsidized food, whether you can get medical facilities. Scandinavian countries do very well on it, but I don't think the rest of the world, especially Africa, does enough. Even public transport is not subsidized. There is no subsidized public transport. Governments have to work towards seeing how do you get benefits down to the poor. Financial inclusion and mobile money connections are a critical way. When the World Food Program wants to send as low as $20 to a family in Malawi, people like us, we come in with these small phones with a $8 phone. The person can put a SIM card in it and get money and use it as they want. So we'll have to drive financial inclusion. We'll have to have direct money transfers to people. Governments have to do a lot more for the poor, and that is one critical part. Second, coming to industry growths, to be very honest, I call this telecom as a giffen good. And I'm sure as students of economics, you must have all learned this. So as prices go up, let me give this example of what Giffen found in Ireland, I guess. When prices go up, both lamb and potato prices go up. So poor people who can't afford lamb start dropping down to potato. When prices go down, a lot of poor people who didn't eat enough also bought more potatoes. Potato is a substitute to lamb, a cheaper substitute of calories. So what happens when prices go up, you sell more potatoes. When prices go down, you sell more potatoes. Telecom is a given good. What you're doing is you're a cheaper alternative to communication, whether going from one place to another or talking to people or any other form. So as long as telecom is a given good, you will continue to see growth in it in good times and bad times. That's the first thing. Second is the unique customer penetration of telecommunication services in Africa is below 50, while it's about 85% in Europe. There's a huge potential to grow. There's a large, very young population in Africa. Digital penetration is less than 20%. 20% of people only have a mobile or a smartphone. So there is a huge potential to grow. Financial inclusion is very low. So from a business point of view, we see huge potential to growth as the nation develops and grows. We are part of the national building story. And I think our growth will continue to come as countries' economic and people's economic status grows.
Thank you. That was excellent. Telecom services as a given good. I think that might be the first time that I've heard that expression. It's been interesting to listen to you talk about how you've grown the business and talk about how you've positioned Airtel. I mean, we've looked at everything from growth over the past couple of years to some of the challenges that you faced in rolling out things like the technologies that you've talked about, and then positioning your technology approach for software upgrades and how that model was transformative in reducing your costs. You also mentioned that Airtel is one of the few, if not the only company or telecoms company in the region that has posted continuous growth over the past couple of years. You mentioned 20% I think there've been quite a few interesting insights gained from the talk, and would like to say a huge thank you for taking the time. But before we round up, I have one more question. Can you tell us about a project that you are personally excited about or that you're working on?
Okay, thank you. And this is a very tricky project, and we're really working hard to get this right. So one of the things when you do financial inclusion is that if your agent runs out of cash or float, he has to contact the nearest super distributor who has to exchange this cash, digital to cash, with a bank. So we live with the banking system in hand. Otherwise, what you have to do is to move cash. There is always going to be a cash and wallet imbalance in financial inclusion. That's why you would see these security vehicles carrying cash going between ATMs. Sometimes you have to load money into ATM, sometimes you have to pull out money between bank branches. So in Africa and parts of Africa, where as it is, banks are very low. The number of bank branches are extremely low. For example, in Chad, a country with 15, 16 million population, the number of cities with a bank branch are not more than 12 or 13. There are no ATMs there beyond this number of towns. Beyond 13 towns, there is no banking services. That means the nearest bank to a large number of people is 400, 500 miles, if not more. So how do you do, if your cash or wallet gets over, how do you do it? How do you run an ATM or a bank branch system without security vehicles moving? That means each unit of location should be cash neutral. As much cash comes into that geography or a village, that much cash has to go out. How do you build a self-sustaining ecosystem where no more cash is required or no less cash is required? How do you balance the salary payments of governments into that city with the money that goes out of that city? So if you take a small town like Faya, a large town in the northern part of Chad, how do we ensure that the money flowing into Faya is equal to the money flowing out of Faya through the Airtel money system, so that you don't have to rebalance cash there? So you're tying up with businesses who buy. Suppose a diesel company buys petrol and sends money to Jamena, the capital. Coca-Cola distributor sends money. So this is the money that goes there. But when cattle is sold from Faya, the money comes in. Salaries of government employees. How do you create self-balancing, self-sustaining units so that you are able to service people with financial inclusion in those markets? And that creating at every small ecosystem, small distant town, without bank branches, without moving cash too much around, because of security reasons, long distances, is how you will have to build this model. So you'll have to find a lot more innovative solutions, and we're working towards it. We're tying up with distributors, we're tying up with shop people, we're tying up with petro companies, we're tying up with salaries. How do you tie up with a bank salaried account where you can withdraw cash on your Airtel money? How do you create these self-sustaining units? And to me, that is the challenge that we'll have to overcome.
Thank you. I think that was the perfect note to end on. It's really the ecosystems, because again, the theme of our talk today was enabling ecosystems. And I think that really captures the approach that Airtel is taking, the approach that you're taking to building out ecosystems beyond just, telecom services, but really inclusive ecosystems that support the consumers. Thank you so much again for the time. It's been a pleasure having you on. I'm sure we'd love to hear a bit more about how some of these initiatives build out over time. But until then, thanks a lot for the time, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ugo. Thank you much, everybody who's listening to this. I'm sure we will interact more in future. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.